everybody, welcome to Catherine Sews. Thank you so much for joining me today. Over the holidays, my favorite jeans mysteriously shrunk in the closet. Do you remember a few years ago, I took some vintage Levi's and I did some Sashiko stitching and patches on the knees, and it was my first try at Sashiko stitching and I really loved it. So I thought, well, maybe that's how I can upcycle these upcycled jeans so that they fit again. So before I get into upcycling these jeans, I want to take a second to thank Quince for sponsoring this video. If you watch my channel, you know I don't buy fast fashion, and in fact I only buy about 5 or 6 new pieces a year, if that. Last year I think I bought 1 new piece. But when I do buy something that's new, I want it to feel like a special treat. I want it to be luxurious and beautiful and well-made and ethical. And I need it to be affordable as well. So I was familiar with the Quince brand because about 2 or maybe even 3 years ago, I bought a set of their linen sheets. Since then, I've had nothing else on my bed except Quince linen sheets, and I absolutely love them. They feel amazing, and they were really affordable, and they've lasted perfectly. So when Quince started to move more into apparel, I really took notice because I knew they would offer luxury at a really affordable price and still be ethical and sustainable and still use beautiful natural fibers. Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and sustainable practices. Quince is not fast fashion. They don't steal other people's designs. Their pieces are just timeless and classic and so beautiful. So when I get my jeans done, I'll style them up with 4 pieces that I've ordered from Quince that I think are all going to look fantastic with jeans and give that little feeling of luxury. What I want to do is use scraps of denim from my stash and have a series of different techniques, including Sashiko stitching, but also including regular embroidery, mainly just the running stitch, which basically that is what Sashiko is. It's running stitch, but in beautiful geometric patterns. I think it's going to be really pretty. Now it is going to take me a while. I'm filming the intro today, but I'll be filming little bits of embroidery along the way. So in terms of making the jeans bigger, I will just be using kind of a standard idea of putting a strip all the way down the side, but all of the love and creativity is going to be in those embroidery stitches. So I did go ahead and order a Sashiko kit, and I'm waiting, hopefully it arrives in the next couple of days, but it has the little templates to make those geometric designs a bit easier. It also has the needles. Apparently the Sashiko needles are better, so I will let you know if they actually are. And of course, Sashiko thread, that one you really do need. I mean, I suppose you could use white embroidery thread, but the traditional Sashiko thread is part of the look, I think. So if that sounds fun to you, let's get busy. So I went through my denim scraps. I found pieces that are light, medium, and dark, and I'm kind of arranging them from shortest and narrowest and lightest color to medium to the dark, longest, and widest. This piece that's going to be going into the top, I've got the hem there, and that actually will make it easier when I sew that in to have that finished edge. There's lots of ways, if you don't have a hem available, you can wrap it over, but you want to leave room for that. But having a little hem there means that I have that finished edge already. It saves one little step. And same thing at the bottom here. I've got a finished hem at the bottom, which will work nicely down there. So I'm deciding that I want to have the strip about 3.5 inches wide at the top. And at the bottom, I'm going to have it flare out to about 7 inches at the hem here. So I can kind of start cutting my pieces to create that strip. I can also open up the side seam here. I'll do that in a moment. And I've also started planning what I want to do for the embroidery. So my Sashiko kit did arrive, and it's got all of these templates, which are so fun. Like, I want to try all of them. It doesn't have to be a square that you're making. You can repeat them. You can fit them inside other shapes. For this one, I might try doing a mirror image of it so that it's circles in the center. We'll see. I'll just play around with those. This kit in particular came with 5 skeins of the Sashiko thread, plus needles, and a little thimble. I've never tried this kind of thimble, but I will try it because I've never been comfortable with a thimble, so I'll see about that. And then these needles. So those are long and pretty thick. So I'll try those. They have a nice big eye. This looks to me like white embroidery floss. I think it is probably 6 strands for the kind of regular embroidery. I'll be using this Pellon Stick and Wash Away. Again, I've used this recently and I really liked it. It helps a lot. And so I just printed this out. Of course, I had to work some butterflies into the design. So this is kind of nice because it's all one line, so I'll be able to do that in a running stitch. So that's going to go on one of the pieces. So I think I'm kind of ready to jump in here. So for denim, I do love the scalpel seam rippers. They're so much faster. Even through the serging, this whole seam is serged, so that's pretty nice and easy. On a seam like this, that is a chain stitch. And sometimes you can, just like that. Oh, that's a thing of beauty, hey? When you can just pull that chain. Ooh, how fun. Up near the pocket, it gets top stitched, and so it'll only run to there, but that was nice. The other side comes out just as easily. And then the serging, I can just scalpel my way along like that. Wiggle your way along. Okay, so that's what I call a kitchen table job. I'll finish the rest of this at the kitchen table. So this is the top one. I know I want it 10.5 inches long, so right about in here. And I might give myself a little bit more wiggle room. I'm going to put a bigger seam allowance. I'll put 3/4 of an inch seam allowance just because I'm a little bit of a chicken there. On this line of the center, I want to have 3.5 inches centered there and 4.5 inches centered here. I'll just mark the center and then take 3.5. 4 is there. There is my 3.5. And then down here at this end, I want 4.5. So I'll put 2.25 on each side. There. So by marking it that way, then my pieces end up symmetrical with that angle evenly divided around the center. You don't want it sort of straight on one side and all of the angle is on the other side. So for the next panel, 4.5 down to 5.5. This piece has to be 14 inches long. So let's see if I cut this off even at the top. And then 14 inches. So 2.75 of an inch on either side of the center here. 2.75. Good. And this one is going to be 17 inches long. I'm going to mark the center there. And I'll call that the center there. Okay, 5.5 at the top. And 7 at the bottom, so that's 3.5 on each side. Okay, wow, I love that. Okay, now I can start planning out my Sashiko designs. I wonder if I can combine the butterflies with something beautiful. Oh, I kind of like that. Oh, that's pretty. Idea number 1. I could kind of do a repeat of something like that. So there's idea number 2. This is the one that I thought I would try to do to connect them. So it's more or less circles in the center. And then I could just repeat. So, okay, I'll try that. Oh, you know what I have? I have extra leaves from when I was doing my reverse applique project. I was sort of playing around with the leaves and ended up with some extras. So why not put those to good use? Okay, I like it. So do I want the leaves going up or down? Oh, I think down. Down is pretty. Okay, leaves going down. Wonderful. So then it's just the 2 little ones at the top. Oh, that's pretty. Be a repeat of that. And then one more. Yeah. Okay, looking good. So I'm going to start with this one. And I've got my friction pen. And so you can just draw in those lines. And I want to kind of take my friction marker right to the ends of the lines. I don't want to be unclear as to where to begin and end because it's the precision that makes Sashiko so beautiful. Okay, and now I want to overlap just right. I can also get started on this one. So I've cut loosely around that pellon, but I was thinking, why don't I also trace this instead of trying to trace it onto the dark denim? I think I might just trace it onto the pellon. And here, because this washes away, I can just trace it with a regular pen. So I can just trace all these lines and stick this little bit on. I can even use little scrap pieces and stick those beside. I might as well maximize what I've got here. Okay, so this pellon is not iron-on, it's just stick-on. So you peel off the backing and stick on. Now, when I was doing a reverse applique, I stuck it onto the back. But now it goes onto the right side. So I'm kind of Franken stitching all of these bits together, just using the little scraps to fill in the corners. So I did finish this whole piece with this big telephone pole of a needle, and it was just a real struggle to get that needle through every stitch. And this embroidery floss, which I think looks nice, but it's not traditional. But this isn't a traditional Sashiko design anyway. But I am happy with that. I'll show you once I wash away all that stabilizer. But I'm not happy with the needle. So I went ahead and I ordered a second. Oh, see how hard that is? I ordered a second kit. And I wanted to show you that. So this kit arrived. And I was disappointed that it's more of the same white embroidery floss. So again, it's pretty, but it's not the traditional. It came with a bunch of squares of fabric, different denims to practice on, which I think that's really, really nice. I don't really need it for this project, but something fun to play with. And then there's a couple other things in this kit that I sort of like and don't like. So one thing I didn't like is that it came with the same kinds of needles. These needles that have a big eye, which is great for threading, but they're a little bit short and they're really, really thick. And I just don't love those. But I do want to show you one thing I liked in this kit, well, sort of liked, that it has the designs pre-printed on exactly the same kind of washable stabilizer that I like. So that's kind of nice. And I really like that it's got each stitch laid out for you. It has a couple of blank ones, which I guess you can draw on. The thing that I don't like, first of all, is that I want to be able to repeat this, right? So having one square is great just to play around with these practice pieces, but I want to be able to repeat this design for my project. So that's not actually that helpful for me. But I do like the idea of stitch by stitch because as I was working on this piece, that just came out so pretty. I love that. You do end up with kind of float yarns on the back, which I want to avoid because if that gets pulled, you know, it's going to not be very durable. So I tried to sort of weave in the float yarns as much as I could. The effect, though, is really, really pretty. I was finding it still difficult to make my stitches all even and straight. It's definitely not perfect. I'll show you again once I erase off the green marker. That was a little bit frustrating. It should be a bit more perfect than it is. So I ordered more needles. I ordered these Sashiko needles from Olympus. They're super long, but again, they're just thick and I just don't love that. This one is better. They are really long and still with a big eye. Those ones are better, but they're so long that I kept poking myself. So these are my favorites. These are the ones that I'll put a link to. These are Sashiko needles from Clover, and there are a few different lengths. It's got the gold at the top, so I can recognize it apart from the other ones. I like that. and it's just kind of the perfect length, perfect thickness. It goes through the denim easily. So this is the one that I will link to. So I'm going to suggest that you don't buy a kit, that you just buy needles like this and the traditional Sashiko thread like this. Can you see the difference? It looks really just like a skinny string. It's not an embroidery floss. It looks quite different from embroidery floss. So I'll put a link to the Sashiko thread like this that I like. So really, that's all you need. If you do want to do these traditional patterns, then that first kit with these little templates, drawing them on, I think that is better than the kit that has the iron on, because you can't repeat it. It's one and done, where this one you'd be able to use again and again, right? So the next one I want to try is this on the dark denim, which I think looks so pretty. And I'm going to try to trace through with just my scrap of soap, and I'm going to try to center. In fact, I'll draw a line up the center of this panel just so I can keep my design centered there. Okay, so we'll see how the soap does, because it's important to get your mark right end to end. You know, I don't want to have to guess as to where these lines begin and end. I want the mark to kind of come through the whole way. Alrighty, but that's pretty nice and clear. So I'll show you how I've been doing the running stitch on this. Probably not exactly traditional, but I'm going to take one of those clover needles and let me show you how this thread opens up. When you've got a normal embroidery floss, you just find which end slides through, and it just can come easily out like that. This Sashiko thread is not like that, so don't even try. Instead, you have to take off the whole paper. The whole piece opens up once and again, and then into a big circle there. So you've got a big circle of thread like that. Once you have the whole skein opened up, actually take your scissors and cut the whole thing. And then you have just the perfect length, and you don't have to search for the end every time. You just have your perfect length every time you grab it. So take this whole thing and drape it over the arm of a chair or a lamp or something, because it's just the easiest way to deal with your long threads. And then one thing that came in that first kit that I've been using a lot is a little needle threader. If you've never used one of these, they can be super helpful. You put that wire loop through your needle first, and then put your thread through the little wire loop and pull it back. So that is much less of a struggle. And I do like to tie a knot. I put the end through the loop twice. It's probably more traditional to just do a little double stitch when you're beginning, but I just feel better with a knot. And then that first kit comes with a little guide like this, just to help you plan your route. So instead of sewing like around circles, they're showing like you kind of meander your way, right? So that kind of makes sense. So I'll start down here and make my way around. That'll be good. Alrighty. So the traditional stitch for Sashiko is you put a bunch of stitches on your needle. That's why the needles are so long. The space between the stitches is a little bit smaller than the stitch itself. Now, I don't actually love doing this, like stacking the stitches on my needle. I find it harder, especially around a curve like this. So honestly, I just go down and up and down and up. And I think that helps me to kind of plan where the stitches are going to be and try to be a little bit more consistent. When I'm talking about planning where the stitches are going to be, one thing to keep in mind if you want yours to look like traditional Sashiko stitching is they leave little gaps, like at those intersections, those should be empty. You don't stitch through it. In the instructions with this first kit, they show that it's good, leave the center open. It's not so good to stitch through the center. Avoid crossing over. You don't want to have your stitches touching. There, leave the center open, not like that. Sometimes you have to sort of shorten up a stitch or lengthen a stitch to get it to land at the exact right spot at those intersections. You don't want little knots to be forming. And if your thread does keep tangling like that, you can actually take your scrap of soap and run it along your thread, and that will help minimize that tangling. So see already, just as I'm starting, my soap line is already fading. I did those first 2 panels just sitting in front of the TV with my husband, and just, I like to have my hands busy. And it took probably 1 or 2 nights for the leaves and 2 or 3 nights for that geometric pattern. It's just a nice way to pass the time, and so I don't mind that it takes time. So here's an intersection that I want to skip. So I'm going to come down before that intersection and come up after it. And then instead of continuing around that one circle, I'm meandering this way. All right, so that's it. You can try, especially on straight sections, try your hand at stacking those stitches along the needle the way I showed you. But for me, I've just sort of had better luck, although that's not exactly perfect there, is it? But I've kind of had better luck just by going up and down, especially along a curve. Like, it's just hard to stack stitches onto your needle when it's a curved line that you're doing. These other heat erasable markers, so I'll give those a try and let you know how those are. I'm also trying Madame So heat erasable marking pens. There is a white, so I thought I would try it on here. And no, no love there at all. So that's not, I will not put a link to that. Oh, well, you know what? It's coming up a bit. Oh, maybe I judged too quickly. I can see it's kind of coming up. Okay, then I'm going to erase my little squiggles there, and I'll try one with this. Okay, oh my goodness, game changer. Holy smokes, look, this just ironed off perfectly. And I think this might just be the answer. I use soap all the time to mark dark fabrics, but it doesn't kind of last forever. It does fade with the heat of your hands. But this one, I'm just going to give this a go. It did iron off beautifully. It was funny that I didn't even think it was working at all. And then you could just see the color kind of come up. Okay, pretty good. I'll sew this section and this section, and I'll let you know which lines lasted better, the soap or the Madame So heat erasable marking pen. It's a little science experiment now, and I'll let you know which one is best. Okay, I'm actually getting better, and I really am loving this white marker from Madame So. This is the best sewing tool I've found in a long time. It's absolutely fantastic. It's not rubbing off at all, and you can see that my soap is starting to fade, but I feel like I've got the right combination of tools now, so it's going really well, and I think I'm getting better at sort of stacking the stitches onto the needle. And I don't know if it's easier because this needle is so much better, or if this, it's just slipping into the fabric so much more easily. I couldn't do this at all with those big tree trunk needles I was using before. So a bunch of stitches on like that, and then pull it through, and that's pretty good, right? And then I'm getting better at navigating those little intersections that you want to leave empty. So the space in between is smaller than the stitch, but not too small. And even going around the curves, that's working pretty well. Nice. And you don't want to pull the thread too tight where it's binding. But yeah, you can see it's still a work in progress. Those stitches are longer than these stitches. Ay. We're getting there though. Progress is being made. And I think once your lines get erased, the overall effect is just so pretty that I don't think the imperfections end up mattering too much. So you can see this line is kind of meandering up. It'll come down. So it all gets covered. Okay, so this one is going well. Okay, I finished this one, and I just think that looks so pretty. As the denim fades, I let the design fade off, and I really like that. I think that looks really pretty. That's the one I used this stencil for. And so I'm a big fan of the Madame So's, and I just saw in the box that there's refills that come with it. That's a plus for sure. So the next one I'm going to do is this one where I printed my design on the Pellon stick and wash away, and then I drew it using the template on the bottom. So I think that's a nice combo. I'm almost done this one. The line drawing of the butterflies had lines that were thick and then thin. And so even though it's not traditional Sashiko technique, I tried to do bigger stitches in the thick parts and then teeny tiny stitches in the thin parts. And I think that once the stabilizer is gone, it'll look very pretty. Down here in this area, I'm working away on all of these little rainbow shapes, and I'm kind of getting better, I think. I'm getting better at stacking the stitches on my needle, even around a curve like that. I'm using little tiny patches, so I wanted to kind of get those patches on and secure before I got too much further. Okay, so that's not bad. So I'll finish up this one, and then I want to try one with the second kit, the printed templates that come with those. So I'm thinking of combining two. So I was sort of playing around folding them to see if I could combine two designs. But I think that combination could be nice. That means that I'll cut both of these out. And I've been keeping the scraps from all of the stick-on stabilizer that I've been using, because you can just draw a nice design on there and make your own. This area is going to be the waistband, so maybe if I have to leave any area blank, I guess it would be that area. And then this is seam allowance at the bottom. Okay. Alright, so this is the first one that I'll be using that actually goes stitch by stitch. I'm hoping that it helps me build good muscle memory for making those stitches the exact right size. That one is all done. And to kind of bridge the two, I did sort of sneak in a couple extra little crosses there just to blend a little bit better from one pattern to the next. And so I wanted to play around more with these pre-printed squares because they certainly do make life easier, but I don't want to just limit myself to using them as a square. So for this one, I used this template, and the bottom ones I just turned into complete circles. And then above, I want to take these little drawings of butterflies, and I just Googled butterfly line drawing, and I took a screenshot, and I just printed it on paper and played around with the size. And so I do want to get these on here. I think that's beautiful. So what I want to do though is cut the wing shapes out of these squares. Maybe on one side I'll go the full top wing. On the other side I'll go the full bottom wing. Okay, so what I'm thinking is sort of using this but not restricting myself to that square shape. Okay, so those are my basic shapes, and I still kind of have the remnants of that butterfly, so I can kind of sort of tell where everything is supposed to go. And stick that down, sort of like that. This one I might just try to do only the outline. I wanted to use the scrap of these, but of course you can't see through it. I don't know, if I stick it down, can I peel it off and reuse it? Maybe? Well, that worked. All right, that might be the easiest way to go. Okay. So I got this whole bottom section done, and I think that's my favorite of the templates. It's so pretty, and it went pretty quickly. I really like that one. And so now I'm going to start on this butterfly, and I'm starting with just an outline. So I'm going to do a running stitch, starting on the little antennae. And I'll do an outline around the whole thing, and then I'll fill in the shapes with those Sashiko stitches. You kind of have to keep planning your route. So instead of doing the second antennae, I think I'll come around the body and then do that. So you keep in mind that you don't sort of sew the intersection. So I'm leaving a little gap there. My stitches are not connecting. I am more and more learning to stack my stitches on the needle. I did that quite a bit here. I'm getting better at it, but on little tight turnarounds like this, I think individual stitches are still serving me best. I'm also trying to keep in mind, like keeping my stitches symmetrical a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Like even, let's see, where's a good example? Even in here where it's two space, two, where it's like they're more or less even across the spaces. I think that makes it look nice. And then the same thing here. It's like, okay, I've got 2 stitches on this side, so I'll do 2 on this side as well. Okay, so to travel from here back down to the wing, I've knotted off my thread, and I could either cut my thread and tie a new knot, or I can kind of wiggle my needle underneath my stitches on the back so that I come out where I want to come out. So now it's just a little running stitch. I think I'll go around all 4 of the little wing shapes, but I'll make sure to leave that little gap between my stitch and the outline, right? I think that's a big part of the Sashiko aesthetic, is that your stitches don't touch each other. Okay, so I outlined both butterflies, and then I filled in these wings. And I have to say, these pre-printed stitches really do make it easy. Do you see here? I don't want to have those stitches touching each other. You want to have just a little space in between your stitches so that this one is not touching the outline. So on a pattern like this one, you do all the stitches in one direction, and then you go back in and do the stitches in the opposite direction. Okay, so that butterfly's done. Oh, I really like it. I like the idea of using these pre-printed squares, but not limiting yourself to the square, cutting out shapes and using it like that. I really do like that. So that means I finally get to put my panels together. So I'll just flip right sides together, and I'm going to sew and then serge these edges. But then I will go and do a little bit more hand sewing and top stitch the seams. So I'm finally at the sewing machine, and I'm just using a regular thread and a regular universal needle. I don't really think I need anything too heavy on this, so here we go. So I've got 4 little seams to sew like that. I'm just going to serge all of these seams. If you don't have a serger, that is no problem at all. You can just zigzag your edges. And then those are all chained together, so I can just snip them apart. I'll run this to the iron. So I'll push my seam allowance toward the side that I want to do that top stitch on. Alrighty, top stitch. And so I want to plan my little top stitch here. I'm going to lay the 1/4 inch line right on top of my seam, just like this. And obviously I don't want to do a top stitch right through those circles. I will just kind of keep that same aesthetic, like where your stitches don't cross each other. And I'll do a top stitch there. And I'll kind of skip over the butterfly. And this side is a bit more straightforward. So now I'm going through a lot of layers here, right? Because I'm stitching through the seam allowance. So I don't think I'm going to be able to stack my stitches. I'm just going to go up and down and up and down. Okay. So you get the idea. I'll just do the top stitching on all 4 of those little seams. And then I will finally be ready to put the panels into the jeans. Okay, I did that little top stitch and I'm so glad I did. And I like that it kind of like slips behind the design. So the top stitch looks great. I'm really, really happy with it. Now I'm going to serge both sides of the panel so that I can then throw these two panels in the wash. I just have to get this stabilizer off of there and to see what my designs actually look like without all that yucky white stuff. So let's do that. Now, it doesn't really matter if I wash these now or after I sew them in. I'm just too excited to see what the design looks like once it's all washed. And to speed up even that process, I've got just a bowl of hot water here because I've heard that you don't actually have to, do a whole load of laundry. You just can soak this in hot water for just a few minutes and that stabilizer breaks down. I'll just leave that for a minute or two. Oh, that's pretty sweet. Oh, look how pretty that is. Wow. Oh, nice. Oh, that's so pretty. Okay, I think all this needs is a rinse. And then I'll throw it in the dryer. Oh, I'm so excited. Oh, I love it. Okay, I'm going to rinse and then throw this in the dryer. Yay! And then while I'm waiting for that to dry, the one thing I can do in the meantime is cut open the waistband. So right in line with that seam, I'm just going to cut right through the waistband. And then you've got extra seam allowance here. So I'll just do a little back tack just in like a light blue thread. I'm not going to match the yellow. It doesn't matter too much, right? It's jeans. It's very egalitarian. So I'm going to just sew right there in all 4 of the spots. I can just sort of smooth out my edge like that, or maybe like that. And I'll sew all 4 of those bits of the waistband down. So with everything kind of laying as it should be, nice and flat. So do you see how my light blue thread just blends in and stitches down the original yellow thread? So the jeans are ready for the panels. Okay, this just came out of the dryer. Look at how pretty these turned out. I'm so happy with these panels. They're so pretty. And it was so much fun to do all of that experimentation and try all different stitches and different ways of applying the stitches. I am very excited to sew these panels in. I think I'll start on the back. Remember, I've got that finished edge on the top. This is the hem of a pair of jeans. Now it's flipping, it's going to be on the top. If you don't have a finished edge, then you're going to want to wrap a piece right over the waistband so that you don't have a raw edge at the top here. That wouldn't be nice. But in this case, I can just put my 2 finished edges together and I can just clip. So I'll put a few clips at the top, then a few clips at the bottom, and make sure I'm meeting up okay in the middle. And I think I'll just sew this with a long basting stitch because there might be some fiddling around to do with the fit. So when I baste these, I'll be sewing right in the original line of stitching. I'll just sew right in that line. I've got the jean side up so I can see that original line rather than having the panel side up. And I'll just lengthen my stitch length to the longest length just in case I need to undo it all. And there's just no problem going through the thickness of denim. So for some reason, the panel seems to be a little short. So I'm putting the piece that's bigger down, which is the side I would prefer to have up so I could sew in that original line. But I'm having a little bit of trouble easing that in. It shouldn't have to ease in. I don't know why it seems too short, but here we go. The bigger piece is down so that those feed dogs can help me ease that in. Then it's just no problem to get that to work in. Good. Now the panel is getting sewn to the front in the exact same way. And what I need to be careful of here is, of course, that rivet. I've got room to sew right there. I just need to make sure I'm really on track and I don't stray and hit that. I'm letting the pocket bag stay out of the way, just as it was. I'm trying to follow that original sewing line as much as I can, but if I need to flip it over to help me ease in, then I will. This rivet is the same size on both sides, and that's something you have to check. Sometimes the metal on this side could actually be bigger, and I could end up hitting it even though I'm just sewing close to it. You can use a zipper foot if you need to get around it, but I think I'll be okay. And I'm going to walk it right here just to make sure I'm not hitting any metal. That is a bit scary, but look at that, we're golden. Alrighty, if I just put a little bit of tension on that bottom layer, it goes together just fine. And again, I'll just walk it past that rivet. There we go. Okay, no problem. I'm going to try them on inside out and pin away any excess. So I still don't get to really see the beauty of them, but I'm excited. They were a little bit too big over the hip. So I've pinned it. I could only pin one side while I had it on. So the other side, I'm just trying to make it the same. I've tried to make sure that where my new sewing line is, that it doesn't interrupt any important part of the embroidered design. So, all right, I'm going to give that one more go. I have it pinned evenly, right? I'm taking the same amount off the panel as I am off the jean. And that's always a debate. Like I could undo the seam and take more off the jean and leave the whole wide panel. It's really up to you to see what's going to give you the best look. So I'll just try it this way and see how that looks when I try them on right side out. So now I'm just sewing from pin to pin, trying to make a nice smooth line. And then tapering out right around the knee. And just blending into my first line. Oh, and this is the back seam that I'm doing, so I don't have to worry about those rivets. Okay, these are so beautiful. So I did do quite a bit of tweaking of the fit. So I ended up opening up that seam. So thank goodness I basted it. In fact, it's still just basted, but I pulled the back out more. So I'm taking more off the back and then re-sewed it. And I actually did a little bit on the front too, just because the seam was sitting a little funny. And now it sits so much nicer. So the fit now is great. It's still kind of baggy and, casual looking. So now I want to be able to serge or zigzag these edges. That original serging I just did so that I could wash those strips. But now I want to trim it down a little closer so that my poor little serger doesn't choke on all of that. And again, if you don't have a serger, you'll just zigzag your edges together, and that is 100% fine. So I guess before I serge, I better sew on top of my basting stitch, just with a regular stitch length, right? This is the long stitch length, so it won't be as durable. So I'll just sew over it with the regular stitch length, and then serge my edges. And then I get to show you the final product with my new Quince tops that are so pretty. So let me just get that done and show you. Actually, I'm going to serge first so that I can deal with the serger tails when I'm at the regular machine. You can also just walk the serger over thick parts too. So I'll leave those serger tails and deal with them at the regular machine. And now back at the regular machine, I'll just take that serger tail and kind of cross it over my sewing line. And I'm back on a regular 2.5 millimeter long stitch. And I can put that serger tail right under the path of my needle. So I'm sewing on top of it for a little while. And then I can pull it out to the side. I'll trim that off later. And now I'm just going to sew right on top of my basting with that regular stitch length. And then the same thing at the bottom, I'll just bring that serger tail right up into the path of my needle and try to sew over it for a little while. So there, that serger tail is dealt with. So I'll sew on top of my basting on all 4 seams, and then I finally get to show you my favorite new jeans. So I love my Sashiko jeans, and this is like the perfect definition of upcycling, where it's better than what you started with, where you took something that was unwearable and you made it more beautiful and more full of love than the original. That's the up part of upcycling. So I hope you had fun with that. I loved trying all of the different ways of getting beautiful Sashiko stitching on here, mixed with some kind of regular embroidery, just using that running stitch to create those beautiful line drawings. So the thread, the needles, and the kits that I really enjoyed, all those links will be in the description. And of course, I'll leave a link in the description to my beautiful Quince pieces. This one's my favorite. I absolutely love the feeling of this cashmere sweater. It's 100% Mongolian cashmere, and this is called their shrunken cable knit crew neck sweater because it's not too long, it's not too oversized. I got the large so that it's not tight, it's just snuggly and beautiful. I love it so much, and this is the oatmeal color. I think this oatmeal color looks really great with jeans, but of course I'll be able to wear it with other things as well. It'll look fantastic with black, with ivories. Oh, I'm going to have fun with this sweater. I think this one is my favorite piece. But I also love this t-shirt I got from them. This is their scoop neck tee. It's made out of cotton and modal. And modal is quite a sustainable alternative to synthetics. It's made out of a renewable source and it biodegrades. And it uses a lot less water in its production and it feels fantastic. I don't wear a lot of browns, but this is the redwood brown from them and it's got so much richness to it. I really love this. And again, I think it looks fantastic with jeans. Oh my goodness. And then talk about luxury. How about a pure silk t-shirt? I mean, you can wear a white t-shirt. That's going to look great with jeans. But when that t-shirt is silk, oh my goodness. And if it's affordable, I feel so fantastic in this white silk t-shirt. This is a washable stretch silk t-shirt. And this is actually the ivory. And again, I got the large just for that really relaxed fit. It feels like heaven, and it makes my new favorite jeans feel just a little bit elevated and so beautiful together. And then, I don't know, maybe this one's my favorite. It's probably the one I'm going to wear the most because how fabulous is that? You know that I prefer to get all my clothes secondhand. I'm always thrifting, but honestly, I'm never going to find beautiful silk and cashmere pieces like this. And so it really is just such a special treat for me to indulge in some gorgeous, sustainable, natural fibers that just feel amazing and are actually affordable. This one is the Mongolian cashmere tee. I got the medium in this one, so it's a little bit more trim. And the color of this one is called Faded Denim, which, I mean, how perfect is that? I know I'm going to wear this with so many denim and upcycled pieces. Like, this is a wardrobe staple for me. So I absolutely love everything I got from Quince. I really want to thank them for sponsoring this video. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about Sashiko stitching and upcycling your jeans, getting your jeans to fit you just how you want them to fit, and styling them up with some beautiful pieces that are ethical, sustainable, and just so beautiful. So thank you so much for being with me right here to the end. I always love and appreciate that. And until next time on Catherine Sews, you take care.